Emily Turner, a 33-year-old marketing manager at a tech company, had always found solace in her orderly suburban life in Austin, Texas. Her days were filled with client meetings and strategic planning, while her evenings were reserved for time with her husband, Nathan Turner, and their 7-year-old daughter, Sophie. However, recently the harmony of their lives had been disrupted. Nathan, a 38-year-old owner of a struggling landscaping business, had been unusually distant, constantly claiming that work was overwhelming him. Emily had just returned from a 3-day business trip, which had taken her away from the familiar comfort of her home. As she pulled into the driveway, she thought about the unexpected inheritance she had received from a distant relative, George Adams. The inheritance included a small vineyard and a farmhouse in Napa Valley, valued at around $400,000. Emily had no particular attachment to the property, which meant she was seriously contemplating refusing it. As she unpacked her suitcase, Emily couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling that had been creeping over her. Her suspicion was further fueled by a phone call she had overheard from her daughter, Sophie, just before leaving for the airport. Sophie had been staying at Nathan's mother, Joanne's house, while Emily was away. The little girl had mentioned during the call that her father was working late every night. Emily's heart sank at the thought of Nathan being away from home so often. Determined to find out what was really going on, Emily decided to surprise Nathan by coming home earlier than planned, choosing not to inform anyone of her change in plans. As she approached the front door, she noticed an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway. Her curiosity piqued. Emily quietly let herself in, trying to avoid making any noise. It was then that she heard voices coming from the living room. Emily stood at the entrance, her heart pounding, as she listened in on a conversation that would turn her world upside down. Nathan's voice was unmistakable, but it was the second voice that struck her as unfamiliar. A woman's voice, smooth and seductive, was conversing with Nathan. "What are we going to do about Emily?" the woman asked. Her tone was calm but carried an undertone of urgency. Nathan's response was laced with frustration. "We need her to accept the inheritance. If she does, we can sell the vineyard and use the money to save my business. If she refuses, we'll have to consider other options. Maybe even divorce her to claim part of the inheritance in the settlement." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her husband was discussing her inheritance with another woman, Rachel, it seemed, based on the name she caught in the conversation. Not only was Nathan cheating on her, but he was also planning to exploit her inheritance for his own failing business. Stunned and heartbroken, Emily didn't know how to react. The betrayal she felt was overwhelming, and the realization that Nathan was using her inheritance as part of a scheme to salvage his business was a cruel twist. Her initial impulse was to confront Nathan immediately, but she knew that an emotional confrontation might not be the best approach. Deciding to take a moment to collect her thoughts, Emily quietly retreated from the house, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had just learned. She drove to Joanne's house, where Sophie was staying. The drive was a blur, and by the time Emily arrived, she was already in tears. Joanne, a kind-hearted woman in her early 60s, greeted Emily with surprise and concern. "Emily, what are you doing here? I thought you were supposed to be away for another day." "I need to talk to you," Emily said, her voice trembling. She took a deep breath and recounted everything she had overheard. Joanne listened with growing shock as Emily described Nathan's betrayal and the plan to use the inheritance to save his failing business. Joanne's reaction was a mix of surprise and sadness. "I had no idea Nathan was involved in something like this," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. She then revealed a secret that added another layer of complexity to Emily's painful situation. "Nathan isn't my biological son. I found him abandoned as a baby 30 years ago and adopted him. I never thought he would turn out like this." Emily was stunned by this revelation. It didn't change the fact that Nathan had betrayed her, but it did add a new dimension to the situation. Despite the shock, Emily remained resolute. The betrayal and deceit she had discovered were too severe to ignore. She had decided to confront Nathan about his actions and protect her family from further manipulation. As Emily sat with Joanne, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. The inheritance that had initially seemed like a burden now represented a critical piece of the puzzle in Nathan's schemes. Emily knew she had to act quickly to safeguard her family and take control of her future. Emily's resolve strengthened as she realized the extent of Nathan's deceit and the potential fallout of his actions. She knew that confronting him would be necessary, but she needed to plan her next steps carefully. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Emily would not let Nathan's betrayal go unchallenged. Emily Turner spent a restless night at Joanne's house, her mind racing with thoughts of Nathan's betrayal and the inheritance that was now at the center of their troubles. Sophie had been sound asleep, oblivious to the turmoil swirling around her. Emily felt a deep ache in her chest as she realized how her family life had been torn apart by Nathan's deceit. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, Emily resolved to take action. She needed to protect her daughter and her mother-in-law from Nathan's manipulative schemes. Her immediate plan was to confront Nathan about his betrayal and find a way to safeguard her family's interests. Emily returned to her home the next morning, determined to confront Nathan. She entered the house cautiously, mindful of the emotional storm she was about to unleash. The house felt eerily quiet, and she wondered where Nathan might be. She could hear faint sounds coming from the study, and she steeled herself as she walked toward the room. Nathan was sitting at his desk, shuffling through papers, his face showing signs of stress. He looked up with surprise as Emily entered, his expression shifting quickly to one of feigned innocence. "Emily, you're home early," he said, trying to sound casual. "I'm here to talk," Emily replied, her voice firm despite her inner turmoil. "I know about the plan you and Rachel discussed. I overheard everything." Nathan's face paled as he realized that Emily was aware of his scheme. "What are you talking about?" Emily took a deep breath. "I heard you talking about using the inheritance from George Adams to save your business. You planned to manipulate me into accepting it so you could sell it and solve your financial problems. And you even mentioned the possibility of divorce to claim part of the inheritance." Nathan's eyes widened in shock and anger. "Emily, it's not what you think. I was just trying to figure out a way to keep the business afloat. I didn't want to burden you with my problems." Emily shook her head, her voice rising with emotion. "Don't lie to me, Nathan. I heard everything. You were planning to use me and my inheritance as a way out of your financial mess. And on top of that, you're cheating on me." Nathan's face hardened. "You don't understand. I was under a lot of pressure. I never meant for things to get this out of hand." Emily could feel her anger boiling over. "It's too late for excuses. I'm not going to let you continue manipulating me and putting Sophie and Joe at risk." Nathan's expression turned cold. "So what are you going to do, Emily? Divorce me? I'm not going to just let you walk away." "I'm filing for divorce," Emily said firmly, "and I'll make sure that your schemes are exposed. I'm also going to protect Joanne's apartment from being mortgaged. I won't let you drag us all down." With that, Emily turned on her heel and walked out of the study. She could feel the weight of her decision settling in, but she was resolute. She needed to act swiftly to protect her family. Later that day, Emily returned to Joanne's house to share the news of her confrontation with Nathan. Joanne listened attentively, her concern evident. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," Joanne said, placing a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. "I had no idea Nathan was involved in such deceitful activities." Emily nodded, grateful for Joanne's support. "I'm going to take legal steps to protect Joanne's apartment and make sure Nathan's actions are brought to light. I also need to deal with the inheritance issue. It's clear now that Nathan planned to use it for his own gain." Joanne looked thoughtful. "You have to be careful. Nathan is desperate, and desperate people can be dangerous. Make sure you have everything in place before making any major decisions." Emily agreed. "I'm already working with a lawyer to handle the divorce proceedings and protect Joanne's assets. I also need to deal with the inheritance. I don't want anything to do with it if it means enabling Nathan's schemes." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity for Emily. She met with her lawyer to discuss the divorce and the legal measures needed to protect Joanne's apartment. She also contacted the legal representatives handling the inheritance to ensure that the vineyard and farmhouse were not sold or misused. During this time, Emily was contacted by Aaron, an insurance investigator who had been poisoned by Nathan. Aaron had been investigating Nathan's involvement in insurance fraud, and he revealed that Nathan had attempted to eliminate him to cover up his illegal activities. Aaron's revelation added another layer to the already complex situation. Aaron, a middle-aged man with a sharp mind and a strong sense of justice, agreed to meet Emily to discuss the case. They met at a quiet cafe, where Aaron explained the extent of Nathan's fraud and the threats he had made against him. Nathan's been involved in some serious insurance fraud, Aaron said, his voice low and intense. I had been tracking his activities when he decided to take me out. Fortunately, I survived, and I'm determined to see him brought to justice. Emily listened, her determination to see Nathan held accountable growing stronger. I need your help. I want to gather evidence against Nathan and ensure that he can't continue with his schemes. Aaron nodded. I'll help you. We need to act quickly and carefully. Nathan will try to cover his tracks, but with the right evidence, we can expose him. With Aaron's help, Emily began to gather evidence against Nathan, setting the stage for a confrontation that would bring everything to a head. As she prepared for the challenges ahead, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was determined to reclaim control of her life and protect her family from the deceit and betrayal that had threatened to destroy them. Emily Turner's resolve strengthened as she began working with Aaron, the insurance investigator, to gather evidence against Nathan. Each day was filled with the whirlwind of legal meetings, evidence collection, and strategizing. Emily knew that exposing Nathan's deceitful schemes was crucial not just for her, but for protecting her family's future. One chilly morning, Emily and Aaron met at a small law office to review the evidence they had gathered. Aaron had been tirelessly working to document Nathan's fraudulent activities, and they needed to consolidate their findings. We've got some solid leads, Aaron said, laying out a series of documents and photographs on the table. Nathan's been involved in fraudulent insurance claims, and it looks like he's been using his landscaping business as a front for these activities. Emily studied the documents closely, her heart pounding. This is damning evidence, but we need to ensure everything is airtight before we make any moves. Nathan is not going to go down without a fight. Aaron nodded in agreement. We should focus on securing additional evidence and preparing for potential legal battles. I've got contacts who can verify some of the transactions Nathan was involved in. We need to make sure we're thorough. Meanwhile, Emily took immediate steps to protect Joanne's apartment from being mortgaged. She met with a real estate lawyer to ensure that Nathan's plans to leverage Joanne's property for his business were thwarted. The lawyer assured her that they could prevent any such actions if she acted swiftly. As the days went by, Emily's determination became clearer. She was not only fighting to protect her daughter and mother-in-law, but also seeking justice for the betrayal she had endured. She was deeply aware that the $400,000 inheritance from George Adams was more than just a financial asset. It was a symbol of her newfound strength and independence. Emily continued to work closely with Aaron, and their efforts paid off when Aaron uncovered a critical piece of evidence. A series of emails between Nathan and Rachel discussing plans to sell the vineyard and farmhouse. This evidence further confirmed Nathan's intention to exploit Emily's inheritance for his benefit. In the meantime, Emily had decided to refuse the inheritance. It was clear that accepting it would only play into Nathan's hands. She contacted the legal representatives handling the inheritance and officially declined the offer. The vineyard and farmhouse would not be used to further Nathan's schemes. However, the situation took a turn when Emily received a call from Joanne, who was visibly distressed. Joanne had discovered that Nathan had been trying to access her apartment's financial records, further confirming his intention to mortgage the property. I've called the lawyer, Joanne said anxiously, but I'm worried about what Nathan might do next. He's desperate and unpredictable. Emily reassured Joanne. We're on top of this. I've taken legal steps to protect the apartment, and we have evidence of Nathan's fraudulent activities. We just need to stay vigilant. With Aaron's assistance, Emily continued to build her case against Nathan. Aaron's investigation revealed that Nathan had been involved in insurance fraud for years, using his landscaping business to cover up his illicit activities. The evidence was overwhelming, and Emily was determined to see Nathan brought to justice. One afternoon, Emily and Aaron met at a local park to discuss their next steps. Aaron had managed to gather testimony from a few of Nathan's former associates who were willing to provide information about Nathan's illegal dealings. "We have a solid case," Aaron said. "We're ready to present the evidence to the authorities. Nathan's going to have a lot to answer for." Emily took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. "It's been a long and painful journey, but I'm ready to see this through. I want to make sure Nathan can't harm anyone else." Aaron nodded, understanding the weight of Emily's words. "We're in this together. Once we present the evidence, we'll need to be prepared for a legal battle. Nathan won't go down easily, but with the evidence we have, we're in a strong position." As Emily prepared to take the next steps, she was reminded of the importance of her family's support. Despite the turmoil, she found solace in her relationship with Joanne and her daughter, Sophie. Their strength and resilience gave her the courage to face the challenges ahead. Emily's decision to refuse the inheritance and focus on protecting her family's assets marked a turning point in her journey. She was no longer just reacting to Nathan's betrayal. She was actively taking control of her life and seeking justice. The final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and Emily felt a renewed sense of hope. She was determined to see Nathan held accountable for his actions and to ensure that her family's future was secure. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Emily was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that she had the strength and support to overcome any obstacle. As the sun set over Austin, Emily's thoughts were focused on the upcoming confrontation with Nathan. She knew that the battle was far from over, but with Aaron's help and her unwavering resolve, she felt prepared to take the final steps in her quest for justice. Emily Turner's life had reached a critical juncture. With Aaron's help, she had gathered undeniable evidence against Nathan Turner. The time had come to bring her estranged husband to justice and secure her family's future. One brisk morning, Emily and Aaron arrived at the courthouse. Emily's nerves were taut as a bowstring, but she was determined. Aaron, calm and composed, reassured her as they walked toward the building. "Today is the day," Aaron said. "We have everything we need to hold Nathan accountable." Emily nodded, her mind racing through the evidence they had meticulously compiled. They had clear proof of Nathan's insurance fraud, his plans to exploit the $400,000 inheritance, and his attempts to mortgage Joanne's apartment. This evidence was irrefutable, and the authorities were ready to act. The courtroom was filled with tension as Nathan was escorted in. His face was a mask of defiance, but Emily could see the flicker of anxiety in his eyes. As the proceedings began, Emily took a deep breath, ready to face the man who had caused her so much pain. Aaron presented the evidence with clarity and precision. Witnesses, including Aaron's contacts and Nathan's former associates, testified about Nathan's illegal activities and his attempts to deceive Emily. The case against Nathan was compelling, and it became clear that his deceitful schemes were being unraveled. As the trial continued, Emily sat quietly, her thoughts on her daughter Sophie and her mother-in-law Joanne. They were waiting outside the courthouse, both offering their support in their own ways. Joanne had been a rock throughout this ordeal, and Sophie had been a source of strength, even if she didn't fully understand the situation. When the verdict was finally announced, Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. Nathan was found guilty of multiple charges, including insurance fraud and conspiracy to exploit Emily's inheritance. The judge sentenced him to several years in prison, and he was immediately taken into custody. The courtroom erupted in murmurs of relief and satisfaction. Emily's heart felt lighter than it had in months. The weight of Nathan's betrayal had been lifted, and justice had been served. After the trial, Emily met with Aaron outside the courthouse. They exchanged a look of mutual respect and gratitude. Aaron had been more than just a legal ally. He had become a trusted friend. "Thank you, Aaron," Emily said, her voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without you." Aaron smiled warmly. "It was an honor to help you. You were incredibly strong through all of this. Now you can start rebuilding your life." With Nathan's legal troubles behind her, Emily turned her attention to her family. She reunited with Sophie and Joanne, both of whom embraced her with open arms. The emotional support from her family was a balm to her weary soul. The next day, Emily made a decision about the $400,000 inheritance. She had already refused the vineyard and farmhouse, knowing that accepting it would only have fueled Nathan's schemes. Instead, she chose to gift the property to Mike, a local groundskeeper who had always dreamed of owning a vineyard. It was a gesture of kindness and a way to turn a painful chapter into something positive. Mike was overjoyed with the gift and expressed his gratitude with heartfelt thanks. Emily felt a sense of fulfillment knowing that the property would be used for something good, rather than falling into Nathan's greedy hands. As weeks passed, Emily began to rebuild her life. She focused on her career, spending quality time with Sophie, and strengthening her bond with Joanne. The challenges she had faced had left her stronger and more resilient. Her relationship with Aaron also blossomed into something more profound. What began as a professional alliance evolved into a deep and meaningful connection. One evening, as Emily, Sophie, and Joanne sat together in their cozy living room, they reflected on the journey they had been through. Emily felt a renewed sense of hope and optimism. The hardships had tested her, but she had emerged victorious. Joanne looked at Emily with pride. "You've been through so much, but you've handled everything with such grace. I'm proud of you." Emily smiled, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Joanne. I couldn't have done it without you and Sophie. And Aaron, he's been a true friend." As the sun set over Austin, Emily's family gathered together for a simple but heartfelt celebration. It was a time to honor their strength, resilience, and the power of family bonds. The future was uncertain, but Emily faced it with hope and confidence. In the end, the story of Emily Turner was one of overcoming betrayal, seeking justice, and finding strength in her family. She had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, ready to embrace a new chapter of her life with the people she loved.